The morning was quiet and calm, and she stepped out of her house with a cup of coffee in her hand, ready to enjoy the soft sunlight that touched the street. She took a deep breath, enjoying the fresh air, and then froze. She looked at her driveway, and the spot where her Mustang always rested was empty. The car was gone. Her heart skipped a beat as disbelief washed over her. She looked around, hoping to see someone hiding or a clue of what happened, but the street was silent. Her mind raced, trying to understand who could have taken it and why. The Mustang was more than just a car. It was her favorite possession and a part of her daily life. She remembered the day she bought it, how she had saved for months and finally found the perfect car. The shiny exterior, the smooth engine, the way it roared on the road, all of it made her feel alive. Losing it was not just about losing a car. It felt like losing a piece of herself. She went back inside and grabbed her phone. Her hands were slightly shaking as she dialed the police. She explained what happened, describing the Mustang in detail and mentioning any unique features that would help identify it. The officer on the line was polite, but his voice was calm and routine. He told her they would send someone to take a report, but sometimes it took days for them to catch stolen cars. He tried to reassure her that cars were often recovered, but the words felt distant and unhelpful after. Hanging up, she felt a mix of anger and helplessness. Sitting on her couch, she thought about what she could do. She could wait for the police and hope for the best, or she could try to find it herself. The idea of sitting and doing nothing felt impossible. She could not just watch and wait while her Mustang was out there with someone else. She decided she had to do something, even if it was risky. She began by walking around the neighborhood, hoping someone might have seen something unusual. The sun was climbing higher, and the streets were slowly filling with morning traffic. She noticed neighbors coming out of their houses, some heading to work, some walking their dogs. She approached a few of them and asked if they had seen her car. She described the Mustang, carefully pointing out the color, the decals, and the slight dent on the rear bumper. Most of them shook their heads. Some said they had not noticed anything, but one neighbor mentioned seeing a van parked near the street last night that seemed out of place. That was the first real clue she had. Taking mental notes, she decided to check nearby security cameras. She knew the convenience store a few blocks down had cameras that sometimes captured the street view. She walked there and asked if they could check the footage. She explained that her car had been stolen and that any detail could help. She could see the clerk nodding and motioning her to wait. The footage showed several cars passing by late at night, but then she spotted it, her Mustang being loaded onto a flatbed truck. By a group of people, she could see the careful way they handled it. But the camera angle did not show their faces clearly. These were not amateurs. They knew what they were doing, and they had planned this. Her mind raced. She needed more information. She remembered a small alley behind a cafe she sometimes visited. People often parked there, and sometimes she saw people dealing in cars or parts. She decided to check it. She parked her bike a few blocks away and walked the short distance, keeping her eyes open for any suspicious activity. The alley was quiet except for a few trash bins and the sound of distant traffic. She could see tire marks and scraps of metal that looked out of place. Someone had been working on cars here recently, but it was not clear who. She took photos with her phone, documenting everything she knew. She had to be methodical. If she wanted any chance of finding the Mustang, she had to collect evidence and follow leads. She could not rely on luck alone, she thought. About online marketplaces where stolen cars were sometimes sold, she opened her phone and started checking listings, searching for any car that matched the description of her Mustang. She saw a few cars that looked similar, but nothing that matched exactly. She made notes of suspicious ads, just in case they led somewhere. Hours passed, and she barely noticed the time. She kept thinking about the Mustang and what it meant to her. She imagined it in the hands of strangers, imagining the joy they might feel, and at the same time the fear that they could damage it. She refused to let that happen. She felt a determination growing stronger inside her that she had never felt before. She decided to contact a friend who had experience with cars and knew about mechanics and car parts. This friend might be able to recognize something she could not. She called and explained the situation. Her friend agreed to help and suggested meeting at the garage later in the day. They could look at the photos together and try to figure out possible locations the car could be. The afternoon turned into evening. She kept moving from place to place, following every small lead. She did not sleep or rest because every minute mattered she passed by. Pawn shops and asked if anyone had seen her Mustang. She left descriptions with owners, hoping that if the thieves tried to sell parts, they would be recognized. Each encounter brought a mix of hope and frustration, but she did not let it slow her. Down by nightfall, she returned home exhausted. Her mind was still active, thinking about the clues she had gathered. She reviewed every detail again, making a mental map of what she knew and what she needed to find out. She was not sure yet how she would get the Mustang back, but she knew one thing. She was not going to give up. The car meant too much, and she had the courage to go after ISG. Sat down on her couch and looked out the window at the quiet street, thinking about the next steps. She felt a strange mixture of fear and excitement. She knew the journey ahead would be dangerous and difficult, but she also felt alive. Ready to face whatever came next, the Mustang was out there and she would find it, and no one would expect the lengths she would go to get it back. The next morning she woke up early, her mind still filled with thoughts of the Mustang. She felt a restless energy that would not let her stay still. She decided to continue following every clue and lead, no matter how small. She reviewed the notes and photos she had taken the previous day, trying to connect the dots and figure out a pattern. She thought about the van that her neighbor had mentioned and the flatbed truck she saw in the footage. She knew she had to trace their movements somehow. She started by visiting more neighbors, asking if anyone had noticed strange vehicles or people in the area during the night. Some were helpful, while others shrugged and said they had not seen anything unusual. One elderly man mentioned hearing engines late at night, but he could not say much more. She listened carefully to every word, noting the details that might seem small, but could be important. She asked for descriptions of people if anyone had seen them. Next, she decided to check the nearby streets for cameras she could access. She remembered a gas station a few blocks away that had cameras facing the street. She walked there and explained her situation. She hoped the footage might show the van or any other vehicles connected to the theft. The clerk allowed her to view the screens, and after a few minutes, she spotted the van moving slowly through the street late at night. She made a mental note of the license plate partially visible. She knew this could be a crucial lead. With this new information, she decided to check online platforms where cars or car parts were sometimes sold. She spent hours scrolling through listings looking for a car that matched the Mustang her eyes scanned. Every image and description she saw, cars that looked similar, but none that were exact. She saved the ads that seemed suspicious and planned to check them in person. She also thought about the possibility that the thieves might be dismantling the car for parts, which made her urgency even stronger. She contacted her friend who had experience with cars and asked to meet at the garage. Her friend agreed, and they started analyzing the photos and footage. Together they discussed the patterns they noticed, the likely locations, and the possible intentions of the thieves. They talked about safe ways to approach the situation and how to avoid getting caught in a dangerous scenario. They made a list of places to check the following day, from pawn shops to repair shops, and even some garages that were known for dealing in second-hand cars. She then decided to explore the neighborhood alley she had noticed the previous day. She walked carefully, keeping her eyes open for any sign of activity. The alley was quiet and dark, but she noticed fresh tire marks and scraps of metal that seemed out of place. She took photos and noted the details. She realized that whoever had been here knew what they were doing and had taken care to avoid leaving obvious clues. She felt a mix of fear and determination, knowing that this was her chance to find more evidence. She spent the afternoon visiting pawn shops and second-hand stores. She asked if anyone had seen her Mustang or a car that matched its description. She described the Mustang, carefully mentioning unique features and minor damages. She noticed that some people seemed suspicious, avoiding eye contact or giving vague answers. She took note of these people and planned to return later if needed. She left her contact information, hoping that if anything turned up, someone would reach her. As the evening came, she walked back through the neighborhood, thinking about the clues she had gathered. She had tire marks, photos, video footage, and several suspicious locations. She was piecing together a picture of what had happened and where the Mustang might be. She knew it was risky, but the sense of purpose kept her going. She felt stronger and more focused than ever before. She knew the next steps would require courage and careful planning. She returned home and reviewed all the information she had collected. Her mind was full of ideas and possibilities. She mapped out a plan for the following day. She would revisit some locations, look for more clues, and try to identify anyone who might be connected to the theft. She thought about the determination and cleverness she would need to retrieve her Mustang, and she felt ready for the challenge. The car was out there waiting, and she was prepared to find it and take it back the next morning. She was up before sunrise. Her mind was full of thoughts about the Mustang and how to find it. She had mapped out her plan from the previous day and felt ready to follow through. She packed her bag with essentials, a flashlight, her phone, and a notebook to keep track of every detail she knew the day would be long and possibly dangerous, but her determination was stronger than fear. She decided to start with the pawn shops and secondhand stores she had visited earlier. She wanted to speak to the owners again and see if they remembered anything new or suspicious. She walked from shop to shop describing the Mustang again and asking if anyone had tried to sell parts of it. She noticed that some of the owners were more helpful this time, offering information about a man who had come in asking about cars similar to hers. They could not remember much, but the description matched the van she had seen in the camera footage. She wrote down every detail and decided to follow this new lead. She remembered a warehouse near the edge of the city, where abandoned vehicles were sometimes stored. She thought it might be worth checking. She rode her bike carefully, keeping an eye on the streets and noting any unusual activity. As she approached the warehouse, she slowed down, observing the area. From a distance, there were no cars parked outside, but she could see shadows moving inside. It was risky, but she decided to investigate further. She circled the warehouse, looking for another entrance. She found a small side door that was slightly open. She peered inside, seeing a dimly lit space with stacks of crates and some vehicles covered with tarps. She could hear faint sounds of someone moving around. She stepped back, knowing it would be dangerous to enter alone. She took photos from a distance and noted the layout. She could see that the Mustang might be inside, but she needed more information before taking any action. Decided to check the surrounding area for clues. She noticed tire tracks leading away from the warehouse and made a mental note of the direction. They seemed fresh, indicating someone had been there recently. She followed the tracks for a short distance, but kept a safe distance from the warehouse. She knew patience and observation were important. She did not want to alert anyone that she was investigating. After some time, she returned to the neighborhood where she knew some of the locals might have seen the van or people connected to the theft. She spoke to a few more neighbors, asking if anyone had noticed unusual activity. She described the van, the people she suspected might be involved. One neighbor mentioned seeing a group of people working on a car late at night in a secluded lot. This matched the pattern she was tracing and gave her a new location to investigate. She rode to the lot carefully, keeping her eyes open. She observed from a distance, seeing the outline of vehicles under covers. She noticed a man checking the cars, occasionally glancing around to make sure no one was watching. She stayed hidden and took notes, trying to remember the details that might help identify the people involved. She also recorded the direction they entered and exited the lot. She felt a mix of fear and excitement, knowing she was getting closer to her Mustang. She returned home briefly to review all the new information. She mapped out the locations on a notebook and connected the clues. She realized that the warehouse and the lot were likely part of the same operation. She also noticed that the time patterns indicated the people involved were careful but predictable. She felt a surge of confidence, knowing she could use their routine to her advantage. Her friend, who had experience with cars, joined her later to discuss the findings. They looked at the photos and notes together, analyzing the situation. They discussed safe ways to approach the problem and how to track the Mustang without putting themselves in immediate danger. They planned a strategy to monitor the locations and gather more evidence before taking any direct action. That evening, she walked through the streets nearby, observing the areas she had identified. She noticed the subtle signs people left behind: the discarded wrappers, tire marks, and movement shadows. She felt her senses sharpen as she paid attention to every detail. She knew that staying alert and methodical was her best chance to recover the Mustang. Hours passed, and she continued gathering information, speaking to more locals, and checking the online listings again. She compared the descriptions and photos with the notes she had taken. She was determined not to miss anything that could lead her to the car. Each clue brought her closer and strengthened her resolve. She felt a growing sense of control over the situation, knowing that her careful approach was beginning to reveal the path to her Mustang. By nightfall, She returned home exhausted. But focused, she reviewed everything she had collected, mapping it out again. She thought about the next day and how she would continue the investigation with her friend. She knew that the path ahead would be challenging, but she felt ready. She was no longer just hoping to find the Mustang, she was actively hunting for it, and nothing would stop her from getting it back. The following morning, she woke up feeling more determined than ever. Her mind was focused on the Mustang and the path she had been tracing over the past days. She packed her bag with the essentials: flashlight, phone, notebook, and a small bottle of water. She knew that today she would get closer to finding the car and possibly confronting the people involved. She met her friend at the garage, and together they went over the information they had collected. They reviewed the photos, the notes, and the patterns of activity at the warehouse. In the secluded lot, they discussed strategies to observe without being seen and how to gather more evidence safely. They planned to take turns monitoring the locations so that they could catch a glimpse of the Mustang or the people handling it. They first went to the warehouse, arriving before sunrise. The area was quiet and empty except for the faint sounds of distant traffic. They stayed hidden behind some bushes. Observing the side door and the surrounding area, she took notes on the positions of crates and vehicles inside and the movement of shadows. They noticed a man entering the warehouse and then leaving after a short while, as if he was checking the place. Her friend pointed out details she had not noticed before, helping to piece together a clearer picture of the activity. After some time, she decided to check the alley behind the cafe she had visited earlier. She thought that if the thieves were moving the Mustang, they might use this route. It was quiet, and the early morning air felt crisp as she walked slowly, looking for any signs of recent activity. She noticed tire marks and footprints that seemed fresh. She took photos and recorded every detail in her notebook. She felt a sense of progress, knowing that each clue was bringing her closer to the car next. They went to the secluded lot. She stayed hidden while her friend tried to find a better vantage point. She could see the outlines of vehicles under tarps and noticed a group of people entering and exiting the area. They were cautious but seemed unaware that anyone was observing them. She took mental notes of their routines, the times they came and went, and the way they handled the cars. She realized that by understanding their pattern, she could anticipate their next moves and possibly get a chance to see the Mustang. Throughout the day, she moved carefully between observation points, recording every detail. They avoided confrontations and focused on collecting information. She noticed subtle signs of activity, like discarded wrappers, footprints, and the sound of engines starting and stopping. These small details helped her map out the flow of the operation and estimate where the Mustang could be at different times. She felt her confidence growing, knowing that her careful approach was paying off. By midday, they decided to check the nearby streets for any sign of the van she had seen in the camera footage. They walked slowly, noting license plates and unusual vehicles. She also spoke briefly to a few locals, asking if anyone had seen strange activity. She described the van and the people connected to the Mustang theft. She received a few vague answers, but one man mentioned seeing the van parked near the warehouse late at night. This confirmed the connection she had suspected and strengthened her resolve. As afternoon approached, they returned to the warehouse for a second observation session. She stayed hidden while her friend tried to get closer to the entrance. They watched as the shadows inside shifted and could hear the faint sound of engines. She realized that the Mustang could be moved at any moment and that timing was critical. She recorded the schedule and prepared for the next steps. She knew she could not act recklessly, had to wait for the right opportunity. While waiting, they discussed what would happen if they confronted the thieves. She felt a mix of fear and determination, knowing that a direct encounter could be dangerous, but also believing in her ability to stay calm and clever. She thought about ways to get the Mustang back without risking harm. She also considered involving the authorities once she had enough information to act safely. By evening, they moved to the lot again. Observing from a different angle, she noticed one of the men struggling to cover a vehicle properly. She took photos and compared them with the Mustang. She knew it seemed to match. She felt a surge of excitement, knowing she was very close. The sun was setting, casting long shadows across the lot, making it harder for anyone to see her. She stayed focused, recording every movement and making mental notes for the next day. Hours passed, and she returned home, tired but exhilarated. She reviewed all the notes, photos, and observations mapping out the possible location of the Mustang and the routines of the people involved. She felt that she was no longer just following clues. She was planning a strategy to retrieve the car. She knew it would require patience, courage, and cleverness. But she felt ready for the challenge before. Going to bed, she looked out the window at the quiet streets, thinking about what the next day would bring. She felt a mixture of fear and excitement. She had come far in a few days, and now she was closer than ever to reclaiming her Mustang. She was no longer waiting, she was hunting, and nothing would stop her from getting it back. The following morning, she woke up feeling a mixture of determination and anticipation. She knew this would be the day she got closer to retrieving the Mustang. She packed her bag with essentials: flashlight, phone, notebook, and a small bag of tools. She checked all the notes and observations she had made over the past days. She felt prepared and focused, ready for the challenges ahead. She met her friend early in the morning, and they reviewed the strategy one last time. They decided to monitor both the warehouse and the secluded lot simultaneously. Hoping to catch any movement or signs of the Mustang, she felt a surge of confidence, knowing that the careful planning over the past days had brought them to this moment. They arrived at the warehouse before sunrise and took positions that allowed them to observe without being seen. She could see the faint outlines of vehicles under tarps and the crates stacked along the walls. Her friend signaled her to focus on the side door, and she noticed movement, shadows shifting as if someone was inside preparing to move something. She took careful notes of the routine and the timing. She knew the Mustang had to be among the vehicles, and that the opportunity to retrieve it was near after several hours of observation. She noticed a vehicle being moved onto a flatbed truck. She could see the Mustang clearly this time and felt a surge of adrenaline. Her friend whispered suggestions on how to approach the next step safely. They decided to follow the truck from a distance to see where it would be taken. They stayed hidden using side streets and alleys, making sure they were not detected. The truck turned through several streets, eventually stopping at the secluded lot. They waited patiently from a distance, observing the unloading process. The men handling the cars were careful but not aware of being watched. She could see the Mustang being placed under a tarp. She took mental notes of the location layout, the exits and entrances, and the positions of the men. She realized that timing and careful movement were essential for the next step. She decided to return later that night when the area would be quieter and the men likely less alert. She spent the afternoon preparing herself, gathering tools and reviewing the observations. She also contacted a few people she trusted, explaining the situation and asking for backup in case things went wrong. She felt a mixture of fear and determination, knowing that the moment of confrontation was approaching. As night fell, she approached the lot with caution. Her friend stayed at a distance, providing support if needed. She moved slowly and quietly, staying hidden in the shadows. She could see the Mustang under the tarp and noticed the men had left briefly. She used the moment to get closer, studying the surroundings and planning how to remove the car without being detected. She felt her heart racing but stayed calm, focusing on the details she had memorized. She carefully uncovered the Mustang, checking for any signs of tampering or damage. She was relieved to see it intact and ready. She started the engine quietly and listened for any sounds of returning men. She waited patiently until the lot was silent before slowly driving the Mustang out, following the safest route she had planned. She felt a mixture of relief and triumph, knowing that she was finally reclaiming her car. She drove cautiously through the streets, making sure not to attract attention. She followed familiar routes that allowed her to avoid main roads and any potential observers. She could feel the Mustang responding under her hands as if it knew it was finally being taken back. She stayed alert, but also allowed herself a small moment of satisfaction, knowing that her determination had paid off. When she reached a safe location, she parked the Mustang and took a moment to breathe. She felt a mixture of exhaustion, relief, and pride. She knew that the journey was not just about retrieving the car. It had been about her courage, determination, and ability to stay focused under pressure. She called her friend to update them, and they both shared a sense of accomplishment, knowing the Mustang was safe. She later contacted the authorities, providing them with all the evidence and observations she had gathered over the past days. She explained the sequence of events and gave detailed descriptions of the locations and people involved. She knew it was important to involve them to prevent the thieves from targeting others. She felt satisfied knowing that she had handled the situation responsibly and effectively. Finally, she drove the Mustang home carefully, enjoying the familiar feeling of being behind the wheel. She reflected on the past days and the challenges she had overcome. She felt stronger and more confident knowing that she had faced fear, uncertainty, and danger, and had succeeded. Her determination and careful planning had allowed her to reclaim what was hers and prove to herself that she could handle anything. She parked the Mustang in her driveway and stepped back, looking at it with a sense of pride and accomplishment. She knew the experience had changed her, giving her a new sense of resilience and strength. She felt a quiet satisfaction as she closed the door, knowing that her Mustang was finally safe and that she had proven her own courage and cleverness in the process. The next morning, she woke up feeling a strange mix of relief and curiosity. Even though the Mustang was back in her possession, she wanted to make sure that nothing had been left unresolved. She reviewed all the notes, photos, and information she had gathered over the past days. She felt that understanding the full picture would help prevent future trouble and give her a sense of closure. She started by retracing the route the Mustang had taken while it was being stolen. She wanted to see if there were any patterns or missed details that could help authorities or even herself. She walked along the streets, observing buildings and alleyways, noting the places where cameras could have captured evidence. She checked for any discarded items or tire marks that might have been overlooked. She felt a deep sense of focus, knowing that these small details could make a difference. She contacted a friend who worked in security and asked for advice on how to analyze the footage from nearby cameras. She explained the situation and showed the photos she had taken. She learned a few techniques for enhancing the footage and spotting small details. She spent hours at her computer going through every frame, noticing things she had missed before, like a van parked near a corner and a man walking quickly past a store. She carefully documented everything, knowing that it could help the investigation. Next, she decided to visit the locations where she had previously seen suspicious activity. She walked to the warehouse and the secluded lot, observing the entrances and exits. She looked for new signs that anyone had returned since she retrieved the Mustang. She noticed a few discarded items and footprints. She took photos and notes of every detail. She also spoke to a few locals, asking if they had seen anything unusual. She learned that some people had noticed unfamiliar faces in the area late at night, but had not thought much of it at the time. She spent the afternoon checking online platforms for listings that could be connected to stolen cars. She compared descriptions and photos she found with her own records of the Mustang and other vehicles in the area. She noticed a few cars that had been listed recently that matched descriptions of vehicles she had seen at the warehouse. She documented the information and planned to provide it to the authorities for further investigation later. She visited the pawn shops and secondhand stores again. She explained that the Mustang had been recovered and that she was now helping authorities with information. She asked if they had seen any suspicious activity related to other vehicles or car parts. She noticed that some owners seemed more cooperative and willing to share details. She recorded their accounts carefully, noting times and descriptions. She felt that by gathering all this information, she was contributing to a wider effort to stop similar incidents. That evening, she returned home and reviewed all the collected data. She mapped out locations, movements, and possible connections. She realized that even though the Mustang was back, there was a bigger picture involving people who might have been working together. She wanted to make sure that any patterns could be identified and prevented. She felt a growing sense of responsibility and focus, knowing that her efforts could help protect others. She then decided to improve security measures at her own home. She installed cameras and lights around her driveway and home. She also created a system for tracking her Mustang using a GPS device. She felt that taking these precautions would give her peace of mind and prevent a repeat of the recent events. She checked all the doors and locks, making sure everything was secure. The night fell and she took a drive in the Mustang through familiar streets. She observed how the car responded and enjoyed the feeling of freedom and control. She thought about the lessons she had learned in the past days about courage, patience, and attention to detail. She reflected on how the experience had changed her perspective and strengthened her Determination, she felt proud of herself for handling the situation responsibly and effectively. Before going to bed, she wrote down a summary of the events and the steps she had taken. She noted areas that could still be monitored or followed. She felt a sense of closure, knowing that she had done everything possible to recover the Mustang and document the situation. She also felt a readiness to help authorities if they needed further information. She fell asleep with a sense of calm and accomplishment, knowing that the Mustang was safe and that she had taken proactive steps to prevent future trouble. She felt confident that her careful approach, intelligence, and determination had not only recovered the car, but also empowered her to handle challenges with clarity and courage. The morning sun rose slowly, casting a warm glow across the neighborhood. She woke up feeling a mix of determination and caution. Despite the Mustang being safely back in her driveway, she knew that recovering the car was just one part of the process. There were still many details to uncover, and she wanted to ensure that nothing had been missed in the days of the investigation that followed the theft. She started by reviewing all her notes, photos, and recordings. She had kept a meticulous log of every observation from the initial discovery of the missing Mustang to the night she retrieved it. The careful documentation had become her guide, and she trusted it completely. She decided to start the day by retracing the route the Mustang had taken during the theft. It was important to understand the sequence of events and to see if there were any overlooked clues. She walked along the streets and alleys, noting locations of cameras, unusual buildings, and places where shadows could have concealed activity. She looked for tire marks and footprints that might still remain even after several days. She felt focused and alert, knowing that each small detail could provide a connection that authorities might need. Her first stop was the convenience store that had cameras overlooking the street. She approached the clerk and explained that she wanted to review footage with a more analytical eye. This time she paid attention to the details she had missed before. The angle showed a clear view of the flatbed truck as it moved the Mustang. She noticed a reflection in a window across the street showing part of a face. She enhanced the footage carefully and made a note of distinguishing features like height, posture, and clothing style. She also recorded the license plate of the van more clearly and took screenshots to provide the authorities. She then moved to the alley behind the cafe she often visited. She wanted to see if the same route was used by the thieves. She walked slowly, observing tire marks on the ground and footprints in the soft dirt. She noted the direction and size of the marks, comparing them with her previous observations. She also took photographs from multiple angles to help authorities visualize the path. She noticed subtle clues that suggested the thieves had returned to the alley at night, possibly checking their surroundings or moving other items. She documented everything meticulously. By midday, she visited pawn shops and secondhand stores that she had previously spoken to. She explained that the Mustang had been recovered, that she was gathering information to help authorities understand the scope of the theft. She asked if they had seen any suspicious activity related to other vehicles or people. She noticed that some owners were more cooperative this time, offering details they had not thought important before. She recorded their descriptions and times carefully, making sure nothing was left out. After gathering new leads, she contacted her friend, who had been helping her with technical advice. She shared all the new information, and together they analyzed possible connections. They looked at the patterns of the vehicles, the movements of the people involved, and the timing of events. They discussed how the thieves might have planned the operation and what their intentions could have been. They also talked about other areas in the city where similar activity might have occurred and how to alert the authorities to check those locations. The afternoon, she decided to focus on enhancing her own security. She installed cameras and motion sensors around her home, ensuring that every angle of her driveway was covered. She also installed a GPS tracker in the Mustang. This way she could monitor its location in real time. She felt a sense of control and relief, knowing that she had taken proactive measures to prevent future incidents. She tested the cameras and tracker, carefully making sure they were functioning correctly. While monitoring the neighborhood, she noticed a few unusual vehicles that matched descriptions from her notes. She took photographs and recorded license plates. She planned to provide these to the authorities as potential leads. She also spoke briefly to neighbors, explaining that she was gathering information about suspicious activity. She emphasized the importance of noting unusual vehicles and individuals in the area. They were cooperative and promised to report anything unusual. She felt reassured knowing that the community was becoming more aware and vigilant. As evening approached, she decided to take the Mustang out for a drive. She wanted to ensure it was functioning perfectly and also used the opportunity to observe the streets from a different perspective. She drove slowly, noting streets, alleyways, and buildings where activity could occur. She also checked for security cameras that might help document anything suspicious. She felt a growing sense of confidence knowing that she was not only protecting her car, but also gathering intelligence that could prevent future thefts. Back at home, she reviewed all the new data she had collected. She mapped out the streets and locations on a large notebook, creating a visual guide. She connected the dots between tire marks, camera footage, eyewitness accounts, and unusual vehicle sightings. She felt that the picture of the operation was becoming clearer. She noted potential areas where the thieves might have stored other vehicles or parts and planned to provide the information to authorities in the morning. During the night, she stayed alert, checking the Mustang and the security system. She reviewed footage from the cameras and checked the GPS tracker. She also noted any unusual activity in the neighborhood. She realized that staying vigilant was important, even though the immediate threat had passed. She felt responsible not just for her car, but for helping ensure that the thieves could be caught and prevented from targeting others. Over the next few days, she continued her efforts. She spoke to more neighbors, documenting any unusual vehicles or activities. She compared notes with her friend, checking for any patterns or connections she might have missed. She also followed up on online marketplaces, looking for cars or parts that matched descriptions from her records. She saved any listings that seemed suspicious and prepared detailed reports for the authorities. She scheduled a meeting with local police to provide all her collected information. She brought the notes, photos, footage, and observations. She explained the timeline, the routes taken, the patterns of activity, and the potential connections to other locations. She emphasized that the information might help prevent future thefts and assist in identifying the people involved. The authorities appreciated her thoroughness and promised to investigate further. She felt a sense of satisfaction knowing that her efforts could make a difference. In the following week, she continued to monitor the neighborhood and maintain the Mustang. She updated her security system and kept an eye on any unusual vehicles. She remained vigilant while also resuming her normal routine. She reflected on how the experience had changed her. She felt stronger, more aware, and confident in her ability to handle unexpected challenges. She also felt proud of having taken control of a difficult situation responsibly and effectively. She continued to review her notes and observations, keeping them organized in case they were needed in the future. She occasionally checked the online listings and followed up with neighbors, ensuring that nothing unusual was overlooked. She felt that maintaining vigilance was important to ensure long-term safety and to prevent the thieves from returning. She also shared her experience with close friends, emphasizing the importance of careful observation and taking proactive measures. Months passed and the Mustang remained safe. She continued to drive it carefully, enjoying the sense of freedom and control it provided. She reflected on the lessons learned, including patience, courage, and the importance of attention to detail. She realized that the experience had not only been about recovering a car, but also about building resilience and confidence. She felt prepared for any challenges that might come in the future, knowing that her careful approach and determination had allowed her to succeed. She also remained in contact with authorities, providing any follow-up information. When needed, her reports helped them track patterns of activity and identify potential suspects. She felt proud knowing that her efforts had contributed to the safety of her neighborhood and possibly helped prevent similar thefts elsewhere. Through all of this, she maintained a routine of careful observation, documenting anything unusual and ensuring the Mustang remained secure. She also continued to enjoy her daily life, balancing vigilance with normal activities. She felt a renewed appreciation for her environment and for the Mustang that had been a source of pride and personal challenge. By the end of the year, she looked back on the entire experience Feeling a mix of pride and reflection, she realized that her perseverance, careful planning, and courage had made all the difference. She had faced fear and uncertainty, but had come through successfully. She felt confident, capable, and prepared to handle whatever challenges life might bring in the future, knowing that she had proven her own strength and resilience through the ordeal with the Mustang.